So I think there's a number of reasons why organisations overlook accreditation. Probably the most obvious one is a lack of understanding. They haven't been educated to understand the difference. And on the ground, two security officers might look very similar. They might both be wearing high visibility clothing. They might both have an SIA license. They might even both have polished shoes. So, it is very difficult to see the difference there on the ground. If you stood back and watched for a while, you might see differences in the way that those officers interact with members of the public, depending on the level of training that they've had. But it's only when you really dive into the background, stuff that might never come out. When you look at the checks that are undertaken, the training, the process of onboarding individuals to make sure that they're right for that role, to make sure that they've had the proper training, they're properly prepared and equipped. It does make a big difference. And we've worked on sites where, people are just dropped off in the middle of the night with a shirt and trousers, freezing, and have to make good. Every officer that works in an external environment for us will be prepared with all the proper equipment, warm clothing, because fundamentally that's PPE, personal protective equipment, making sure that they're looked after. There are welfare checks in place. There are a string of kind of really important measures that are undertaken by legitimate companies that, those sort of less formal providers just overlook. Whether they do that because they're trying to save money or whether they do that out of sheer ignorance, it doesn't really matter. The truth is they're not doing what they should. A really interesting story, and it's an incredibly tragic story, and one that no one would ever want to experience. A security officer was employed and they were looking after a site. There were no welfare facilities provided, but there was a container on the site. It was freezing cold, and the officer lit a temporary barbecue to warm up. And unfortunately, the carbon monoxide from that barbecue killed him. There weren't any check calls in place, so even when he was losing consciousness, there might have been the opportunity for someone to realise something was wrong and get someone to go and check on him. That wasn't there. So that poor man's body was found the next working day by employees of the company he was there to look after. They found his dead body cold. No one ever wants to experience that. The ramifications could be huge. I'm sure all companies worry about their reputation, and when something more serious happens, someone's hurt, something bad happens to a child, these apart from the individuals who are affected by this, the families and what have you. When you look at the reputational damage to an organisation, that can be quite hard to come back from. And the risks that they face by allowing people who haven't been properly checked into their business, into their event, could be massive. So it is really important that people think about risk. As boring a subject as that is, it is very important in all levels of all organisations. Fundamentally, an organisation has the responsibility to look after, their own employees and the people affected by the work that they do.